Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Catholics at Home. Now, you may wonder that you know that Catholics at Home usually comes on Saturday mornings at 10:30 a.m. And you may be wondering, how is it that we are having a session here on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m.? Well, we are starting off a new series in collaboration with the Archdiocesan Ministry for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs. We are kind of collaborating with them to bring you a 7-week series on understanding world religions. Now, the song that you just heard in the beginning is the Prayer of St. Francis, and many of you know the song by St. Francis. And Francis, who comes from Assisi, it's a very significant place because Assisi is one of the place where, within the Catholic circles, is the place where interreligious gathering happens. And so we thought appropriately we will begin with the song or the prayer of St. Francis, "Make me a channel of your peace." So wherever you are watching us, you're viewing us from, welcome. Hope you have had your dinner and you are relaxed. Have your cup of coffee or tea with you. For the next 1 hour, we are going to have this conversation to start us off with the religion of Islam. But before we start off our conversation this evening, I would like to bring on the ecclesiastical assistant or a priest in charge for the interreligious and ecumenical affairs of the Archdiocese, Father Xavier Andrew, just to tell us a little bit about the whole concept, the objective of having this 7-week series together with Catholics at Home. So, good evening, Father Xavier.
Good evening, Father. Thank you very much, Father Clarence, for this invitation to Catholic podcast, with which we are collaborating as from AMEIA. AMEIA has been very often wondered. People were wondering, what is AMEIA, Mamma Mia, or Pimia? AMEIA, of course, Mamma, we all know that from Latin, which says, from Italian word that says, oh my goodness, but AMEIA is not so. AMEIA is basically, like what Father has just said, Archdiocesan Ministry of Ecumenical and Interreligious Dialogue. And we are embarking on this program running in collaboration with Catholic at Home podcast, where Father Clarence is no alien to it. He's familiar and popular face. No need any introduction from us. Also, the Catholic Research Center, Director of Catholic Research Center of the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur. Now, coming to AMEIA itself, basically we have a few objectives lined up. To promote mutual understanding, respect, and collaboration with Catholics and people of other faiths, basically to build bridges, promoting dialogue, and with other religious traditions, cultures, and ecclesiastical communities, both with Christians as well as people of other faiths. And besides that, we also encourage study of religions, what we are doing tonight, and we promote formation and persons dedicated to dialogue and ecumenism. These are the thrust of AMEIA. Basically, these are the things that we are embarking on, and currently this is the program that we have devised and we have organized, which will run a series of 7 conversations with different religions, beginning with Islam today. And we thank God for the presence of these esteemed speakers, Dr. Nurul Haq, Alwani Ghazali, and Father Clarence will continue introducing afterwards.
Before we continue, I must tell the audience, Father Xavier and I, there's a special connection between us. Not only because we are both priests in the Archdiocese of Kuala Lumpur, we come from the same town, Rawang, and we lived in the same taman. And we went to the same school, at least, towards our secondary school, we went to the same school. We share similar friends. We have common friends. And I remember playing football in that one field that we had in our taman. I don't know whether you remember that or not.
Yes, I remember.
Which was not very far from where you were living in the same taman. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Father Xavier, to Catholics at Home and to initiate this conversation. I think it's a conversation that is much needed in these times, isn't it? There's a lot of misunderstanding, and because sometimes we don't understand, there's also suspicion, and that causes a lot of unrest amongst many people. So I think an initiative like this to help people to understand really the tenets of the different faiths gives us a wider perspective. And because we live in a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic society, we are bound to relate with one another. And when we understand one another better, it just makes harmony and fellowship a lot better. So, congratulations to your team in AMEIA for having initiated this conversation. And we are happy. Catholics at Home, we are always happy to collaborate with any ministry in the church in a platform like this to bring greater understanding of ourselves, our faith, and also together with the people that we live in. Now, let us now welcome our guests this evening. We have 2 very knowledgeable guests who will be joining us this evening for this conversation. There's Dr. Nurul Haq and also Dr. Alwani Ghazali. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening. Thank you for the Clarence.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking time off. I know that during this lockdown, people think that we don't work, but in fact, I think for me, probably like me, you too, we seem to be working, day and night, and sometimes losing the sense of time also. When is day, when is night? If you don't look out of the window, is it the same for you, both of you too?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I lost counting days these days. I don't know what time it is outside unless I look out.
Now, let me just very briefly introduce both our guests. They have a long list of things that they have accomplished. I'm sure you can look them up in Google. I'm sure Wikipedia has a posting on both of them. But very quickly, Dr. Nurul Haq is a consultant to the United Nations Population Fund. We have met Dr. Nurul. I have met Dr. Nurul on countless occasions on different platforms and different places. And we have Dr. Alwani Ghazali, who's the senior lecturer at the Department of Aqidah and Islamic Thought at the University of Malaya. It's a great pleasure. Excuse me. It's a great pleasure to have both of you with us this evening to start us off on this conversation on Islam. This evening, let me start just Dr. Nurul, if you can help us understand. If I were to ask you, what are the key tenets of Islam? For instance, are there a few key points that it's universal? Anywhere you go, you will see the same things.
Okay. Yes, of course. The key tenets you are referring to is what we call the arkan, or the rukun Islam, the pillars. There are 5 pillars, and these 5 pillars are accepted by Muslims globally, irrespective of ethnic, regional, or sectarian differences. The first one we call the Shahada, which is the declaration of faith. It's very simple. The Shahada says that I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. That is number one. You have to testify, you have to believe this. You must have a firm conviction on this declaration of faith. And then the next one, we have the canonical prayers, 5 times daily. The dawn prayer we begin with the dawn prayer, and then the afternoon prayer, the Zuhur prayer, and then the mid-afternoon prayer. And then the mid-afternoon prayer is also known as the Asar prayer. And we have the sunset, the Maghrib prayers. And the last prayer will be Isha prayer, the evening, similar to your what do you call this? The canonical hours compline. You call it complines, right? You have other Clarence.
Yeah, the night prayer.
Yeah, and then we have the canonical alms, the obligatory alms, the zakat we have to pay, and we have to fast in the month of Ramadan, the whole month, and then the pilgrimage to Mecca for our Hajj and Umrah for those who are able. These 5 are the the key universal tenets of Islam that are agreed upon.
So anywhere you go in the world, you would find this similar. This is the universality of Islam. Could I say that?
Yes. So when you complete this 5 pillars, you are a Muslim.
All right. Okay. But is it the same, Dr. Nurul, for everyone? I mean, irrespective of their age or
yes,
for all 5, they have to fulfill all 5.
Yes, regardless of denominations, sectarian differences, these are basically the same. We share the same tenets, the same arkan, the same pillars.
All right. Okay. But related to that, I mean, of course, we know there's similarities between Islam and Christianity about God. I mean, we come from an understanding there's monotheistic God. If I were to ask you, what is the concept of God in Islam?
Okay. Well, Islam is what you call this monotheistic faith. similar to Judaism and Christianity that claim to be a monotheistic faith, but in the sense that we believe that God is one, undivided and solitary, which is quite different with Christianity. Believe that God is one but not solitary. Am I correct, Father Clarence? It's mentioned in the Catechism. God is one but not solitary. For Muslims in Islam, we believe that God is one. He is one, undivided and solitary. So in the sense that solitary means that he is uniquely alone in his nature. There can be nothing, neither added or nor subtracted from the essential nature of God, and he does not change. He does not have any partners. He does not have any equals, and he is not a body with a form or a limitary. He doesn't resemble anything that exists, nor anything that exists resemble him. And the most important thing is that he begets not, nor was he begotten. That is basically the concept of God in Islam.
All right.
Maybe, Dr. Alwani, if you want to add anything, this is part of your expertise also, I believe.
All right, just a little bit about the pillars of Islam just now that you mentioned. There's one pillar, which is the Hajj or the pilgrimage, and that is actually considered as compulsory within the capacity of the Muslim. If he or she is capable to do so, which means he or she has good health, capable to go financially, and other fulfillments as well, only then that pillar can be performed. So there's a flexibility in that particular sense for the fifth pillar of Islam. Others, I think, Ustaz Nurul has elaborated very well, as well as the theological concept of monotheistic, which we call Tawheed. Tawheed is from the word wahada, which means oneness. One.
Just going back to you're saying about the Hajj. What happens if someone is not able to go or to perform the Hajj? Is there something else?
That is not considered sinful for her or him, because in the hadith itself it mentions that the pillar becomes a pillar for those who are capable to do so. So even if someone is not capable to do so, so the obligation is actually lifted from her or him.
Okay.
Dr. Alwani, just I would ask you about the pillars of Islam. We always, it is presented as exhortations. You know, the 5 pillars of Islam are presented as exhortations. Do you also have similar terms for prohibitions in Islam, like similar to exhortations? Are there any pillars, or you may not call it pillars, maybe some prohibitions? Perhaps you can explain a little bit of this concept of this pillars, whether you have anything, prohibitions of that nature?
Yeah, I would like to add to the explanation of pillars of Islam. Actually, we have another dimension which we call pillars of Iman, and that is also considered as fundamental for Muslims. And there are 6 pillars of Iman: believing in Allah, believing in the Prophet, believing in the books, the hereafter, the angels, and also qada and qadr, or the predestining of good and evil. So these are the basics of Islam. Okay. In relation to the question that you asked me just now, the exhortations, I mean, it is when it comes to prohibitions, we call it haram, the haram things, and when the things are allowable, they are called halal. So there's an area of haram and halal, whereas the haram area, the prohibitions are actually smaller as compared to the halal area, those that are considered lawful. So within that category, actually, the haram, okay, within the haram area, we have many categories. The major, the most sinful act would be a shirk or associating to Allah some any other power. Okay, that is considered the most unjust sin. Okay, then comes other things that are considered as disobedient to Allah, like being rude to one's parents, backbiting, slandering, fornication, adultery, murder, suppressing the poor, suppressing the orphan, liquor drinking, the practice of usury, bribery, so on and so forth. So those are haram, the rest are considered halal. So it's not only the food that we consider haram, but it also applies to many other things, any other actions.
Would that also apply to halal besides haram? Same, besides just not to food, but anything else and everything else?
Yes,
The act of
yes,
halal,
definitely.
yeah.
So
you,
the halal also, there are many categories in halal. There's which is called a mubah, which is you are allowed to do that thing. So it's kind of neutral. And there's mustahab, which is likable, favorable. We are recommended to do those acts because it will produce something pleasant.
Thank
You were talking about belief in the one book, Dr. Nurul. If I could bring you into this conversation, could you tell us a little bit about the Quran, the holy book? How did it come about? Because a lot of people have heard different things. Then from our Catholic tradition, we have a kind of a different perception about the holy book as being inspired. From the Islamic perspective, tell us a little bit about the Quran. How did it come about? And I'm also curious to know, in terms of interpretation, who interprets it? Is there a body that's able to interpret the Quran officially for everyone?
Okay. Before I answer that question of yours, I would like to add into Dr. Alwani's comments on the pillars of faith, the Rukun Iman. In the order of succession, the first is belief in Allah, and the next is actually belief in the angels. The angels, and then after the angels would be the scriptures, the word of God, the book, then only the prophet. The angels in the second succession, because Allah communicates through to the prophets through the angels, so they come second in hierarchy, and the angels impart the word of God to the prophet. So the scriptures come third in hierarchy, then only comes belief in the prophets and so forth. Okay, to answer your question on Quran, to help you understand the Quran, how did it come about, and the authority of interpreting the Quran. Well, it is our belief that the Quran enshrines the literal verbatim word of God. Okay, it's revealed in the Arabic tongue, and that it was transmitted to the Prophet Muhammad by the Archangel Gabriel. And the whole revelation took about roughly about 23 years. And during his lifetime, the Prophet would have individual passages or verses revealed to him, and he and others would memorize these verses, these passages, and under the guidance of Gabriel, the Prophet organized these passages into the existing chapters. And after the death of the Prophet, the text of the Quran was codified during the caliphate of Abu Bakr, his father-in-law, and then it is preserved to this day. As for the structure that offers authentic interpretation of the Quran, this is pretty much covered by the science of tafsir. Okay, which itself it means interpretation, clarification, and among the most important sources for understanding the Quran are the tafsir works, the commentaries of the Quran, and then these commentaries help to explain and contextualize the revelation. There are two types of tafsir. Okay, first we call this tafsir bil riwayah or tafsir bil ma'thur. These are the exegesis, and another one it's called the hermeneutics, the tafsir bil ra'yi. The first type of tafsir, okay, the exegesis, it refers to the reports and interpretations provided by the Prophet himself or his immediate disciples, his companions, his sahaba. And the most prominent one being Ibn Abbas. There are seven authorities after his he has thousands of disciples, and but the only authority or authoritative among them was seven. First is Ibn Abbas, who was also his cousin, and then Ibn Mas'ud, and then we have Ibn Umar, and then we have his wife Aisha, and then we have Ali, and then Zaid bin Thabit. All these seven authorities. It is this type of tafsir that is authoritative to establish doctrine, to define dogma, to deduce laws and rulings. And of course, the authority to interpret these sources is vested upon the qualified religious scholars who have been trained in the science of tafsir. As for hermeneutics, the tafsir bil ra'yi, it is more or less like the philosophical study of interpretation in order to discover the values expressed in the Quran. So I hope that answers your question.
Dr. Nurul, just to ask you about the sacred sources besides the Quran. How about the Hadith and Sunnah? How would you explain a little bit on that, sharing on that? Maybe enlighten us a little bit more on those two.
Okay, the Hadith and Sunnah. Basically, the rough translation would be a sacred tradition. The Sunnah means sacred tradition. It is stated in many passages of the Quran. Okay, there are so many passages. I wouldn't be able to quote all of them tonight. But the gist of the message is that apart from the Quran, there is a body of teaching that we have received, and that we are to hold it fast to this body of teaching, meaning we are not permitted to neglect or dispense with this oral teaching. And this orally transmitted teaching corresponds with and complements the teaching of the Quran. Okay, just as is a sure interpretation of what it reflects in the scripture. This teaching is known as Sunnah or Hadith. Sunnah basically means the actions, the tradition of the Prophet or his tacit approval, while Hadith refers to his recorded sayings, the reports attributed to the Prophet. And then we have another inviolable sacred source. It acts like similar to the magisterium of the Catholic Church. We call this ijma. Ijma is the general agreement or consensus of all theologians, religious scholars, and autocephalous doctors of law. We call them mujtahids. Their consensus about a particular doctrine, dogma, or religious ruling regarding a matter or event after the death of the Prophet. And the rulings agreed upon by this ijma, by this body of scholars, constitute the deposit of faith that is inviolable. And the scholars of succeeding era are forbidden from making the ijma an object of fresh or new scholarly exercise, because the ruling on it, verified by ijma itself, is a definitive legal ruling, which means it does not admit of being contravened or annulled. So that's it.
So you would say, I mean, apart from the Quran, there are three other sources that people would refer to,
Yes.
to understand their faith.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we talked a little bit about the key tenets of the faith. We've come to the sacred book. Just to move on a little bit in this conversation, Dr. Alwani, in terms of, our relationship with God. Of course, ultimately, all religions want to lead us to God. And that simply means that, the whole idea of worship, I think Dr. Nurul mentioned about the 5 sacred moments of prayer. For the benefit of our listeners this evening, what happens in those 5 hours? How see, for example, in the Catholic tradition, it's quite, if you've been to a mass, you know how the different parts of the mass. Is there a kind of a proper order for the 5 prayer hours that you have? And if you could explain to us what happens then, and maybe just apart from the 5 hours, can someone have their own prayer, for a special moment like that?
Yeah. That's that question. Okay. So that question goes to me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about praise, actually, besides the 5 times per day, we also have few in between, which we call a nawafil. So it's like supplementary to those the obligational prayer, the compulsory prayer, and that those are the exercises that we do, spiritual exercises that we do to strengthen our relationship to Allah. Excuse me, Father, because my house is actually beside the surau.
Yeah,
And I'm
don't
sure
worry.
you can hear the azan.
Yeah.
So I would like to pause for a bit and then I continue because the azan is quite loud.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure whether my voice will go through.
So perhaps we bring Dr. Nurul into this conversation. Dr. Nurul, in terms of worship, prayer, could you take us through the steps? What happens at prayer time?
Well, the prayer. Okay, what happens? We have
What are the rituals from?
Yeah. There are rituals, physical rituals, and also the what they call this the pillars of prayer. 13. We have about 13 pillars that must be fulfilled. As you have to stand if you are able for obligatory prayer, and then you must say your intention for the specific prayer, and then you must recite the Fatih, the Surah Al-Fatiha is akin to what they call this the Lord prayer. That is a must. You must read Al-Fatiha in Arabic. After that, you bow down, and then you prostrate, and then you get up from prostration, and then you prostrate again, and then you get up again, and then recite the Fatiha. It depends on how many cycles of prayer you have. For the dawn prayer, we have 2 cycles of prayer. For the afternoon and the mid-afternoon prayer, we have 4 cycles. And for the sunset, the Maghrib prayers, we have 3 cycles. And for the Isha, for the evening prayer, we have 4 cycles. So basically, you kind of repeat the process, and then you consummate the prayer. You end the prayer with salam, where you say, you greet on your right, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, and to your left, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, you conclude your prayer.
Is it a must?
Or these prayers?
Pardon me?
No, is it a requirement that all of the Muslims have to pray this Al-Fatiha in Arabic, or can also do it in?
Yes, but of course, if you are a new Muslim, for example, and there is not much time for you to learn the Fatiha by heart when the time of prayer has entered, you are allowed to recite the simplest form of litany in Arabic, and you can repeat that 7 times. That would suffice it for the time being, until you are able to learn the Fatiha by heart. because
So-
the Fatiha
Yeah.
7 times, because the Fatiha himself is, it consists of seven verses. So that's
So
why.
which prayers are personal? Which prayers are done personally? I mean, you can do it at home, and which ones are done communally in a mosque that you have to go to a mosque? Is there a separation in how the worship is done?
The obligatory Friday prayer must be done in congregation. It doesn't have to be in a mosque, but it must be done in congregation. The rest of the prayers can be done at home, or can be done. It's preferably to be done in congregation, but it's not as obligatory as the Friday prayer that must be performed in congregation.
Yeah, we're not sure whether we have Dr. Alwani is ready, but we will continue. Dr. Nur, so in terms of the prayer, apart from those 5 hours of prayer, if someone wants to pray, just there's a special intention that you want to pray. Is there something like that? You could have apart from the 5 hours, somewhere in between.
Yes, you are allowed. You can. We have this special prayer. I mean, if you have special intention, you want to seek God's guidance. We have the istikhara prayer, okay, and then we have the salat hajat. If you have any things that you wish for, you can perform that prayer. And there are so many other prayers. There are in between the morning, in between the dawn and the afternoon prayer, there is one recommended prayer, but it's not compulsory. It's up to individual. We call it the duha prayer. So yes, to answer your question, we have so many prayers which are not compulsory, but it's up to individuals to one's capacity to perform it.
Let's try and bring Dr. Alwani back into this conversation. We do apologize.
It's okay. I apologize for that.
Do you want? We talked a little bit about prayer times and formal, congregational, then individual, special intentions. I just want to move a little bit to festivals, major festivals. What would be considered the major festivals for a Muslim?
Okay, can I comment a little
Sure.
bit about the worship part and the
Sure.
rituals, etc. I think for us Muslims, the core or the essence of worship is actually to humble oneself as a servant to Allah. So it's servitude, and from there on, it's not merely performing the external actions, as you can see, like the movement of an exercise, physical exercise, but it also requires is the focus, the mental focus, the presence of the soul, and most importantly, about the presence of the soul is actually the feeling that a servant is so small in the eyes of Allah and in the whole planet, in the whole universe. Through that feeling comes hope, comes trust, comes love to do more in terms of not only the physical exercise to worship, the rituals, the prayer itself, the movement, but also to improve the relationship with the creatures, human being as well as the whole universe. The trees and the animals as well, because all is considered as part and parcel of what we have to do as a servant of Allah. And that's the purpose of our existence. So that's the spirit of worship in Islam. And some what we call the Sufis in the past, like Rabi'atul Adawiyah, for example, she forced herself. She started to love Allah by forcing herself to worship until she gained that love, that state of love, because it's a power which is unseen. It's quite impossible to love unless with the spiritual focus. So this is the essence of worship in Islam. So I want to go back to the question about festival. I'm sorry if I answer this, if this answer is quite uncommon, but I consider festivals in Islam as celebrations that we do with meanings. Thus, I am saying that the whole month of Ramadan is actually a festival. Why am I saying that? Because throughout the day, we are worshipping Allah by trying to abstain ourselves from food, drink, sex, control our tongue from saying bad things, controlling ourselves, the whole senses. And at night, there are prayers. In Ramadan, the prayer is very long, which is called Tarawih. That's in itself is a festival. Then nighttime prayer, we have the Qiyamul Layl. We in Ramadan also there's a night which is called Laylatul Qadr, which promises the reward of 1,000 months of worship. So this festival is actually the biggest festival of all. And of course, the common festivals, as one understand, because we have the holidays in Malaysia, Eidul Fitr, which actually is the end of the achievement of the whole month of Ramadan. And finally, we also have Eidul Adha, which is the celebration of sacrifice. So that's basically about festivals in Islam.
No, the reason why I ask you is because in Malaysia, whenever it's a holiday, people just enjoy. Oh, it's a holiday. Never mind. It doesn't really matter what the holiday is all about. We just want the holiday. But just to help people understand, why is it a holiday? It also helps us to understand better. We have different Islamic celebrations. The Prophet's birthday. You have different Hajj, of course, the Eidul Fitri, and so it kind of helps us to also appreciate these things rather than just saying, oh, it's a day to relax. Of course, I mean, no one would ever say they don't enjoy a public holiday, whatever form it comes. Even if we win a football match, we want a public holiday. So it helps us to understand better. Yeah, Father Xavier, over to you.
Yeah, I like that interpretation when you said festivals, especially Ramadan, is not anything but a celebration. It's more festival in itself, not a burdensome thing. And I think that approach towards Ramadan will be a very beautiful approach. Sometimes people think this is a burden we are doing. That apply to anyone, I think, and that's a very wonderful outlook. I mean, interpretation that I just gathered from you. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Dr. Nurul, I want to come to a very difficult point, probably contentious also. It's about the Sharia. There's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of misconception about it too. There's a lot of fear about it. Help us understand. About the Sharia and how does it apply, for example, to Muslims in a if I may use the word in a secular state, like how does it apply, and how will that people are worried, how does it apply to, maybe I'll bring in Dr. Alwani, how does that apply to non-Muslims, to help us understand this very contentious subject?
Okay, when the first thing I would have to say, when people hear the word Sharia, the first thing that comes to their mind is punishment, chopping off limbs, stoning. That is not Sharia. Okay, what does Sharia mean? Okay, because when it comes to the penal code, the punishments, an important point to know about Islamic governance in a secular state or in an Islamic state, whatever you call it, it does not revolve around imposing punishments. Okay, it is about serving justice, adil, adalah, on the basis of the higher objectives of the Sharia. Okay, and this does not mean that there is no need for law, okay, or Islam promotes lawlessness. No, it doesn't mean that, because through the use of normative, directive, and prescriptive rules, supported by what they call by varying degrees of sanctions, law has been used to create a climate of social order that benefits all members of the society, including non-Muslims, and Islam approves such law. Therefore, any machinery of law that serves justice to all members of the society, not just Muslims, but also to non-Muslim, and does not run contrary to the Sharia, is necessarily Islamic, even though it is not textually spelled out as such in the Quran or in the Hadith or in the Ijma. So Sharia, if you look at the broader angle, what Sharia means is actually literally it means the path to the water hole. Okay, but according to Islamic lexicon, if you look at Surah Al-Jathiyah, the 45th chapter of the Quran, verse 8. What Sharia means is the entire code of life that is wanted by God, determined by God, not just one part of punishment. Yes, punishment is one part of Sharia, but it's not the whole picture of Sharia. Okay, and how does it apply to Muslims in secular state? Whether this is a legitimate concern to the non-Muslims, yes, I would say it's a legitimate concern, because you must look at the Sharia as a whole. It's not a religious law applied to the Muslims only. I would like to draw a comparison with the church law. Okay, if you look at the canon law of the Catholic Church, Canon 11 and Canon 1311. Basically, the church law only bind those who are baptized in the Catholic Church, and Canon 1311 states that the church has its own inherent right to constrain with penal sanctions Christ faithful who commit offenses. So, I mean, the church law is limited to those who are baptized. But when it comes to Islamic law, I'm not talking about the Islamic law practice in Malaysia, but the Islamic law as it is. As the law of the land, it applies to everybody, including the non-Muslims. Okay, what this means that the non-Muslims are to be included in the Sharia prescribed rules pertaining to this is a matter of ijma, the matter of scholarly consensus, that the non-Muslims are to be included into the Sharia prescribed rules pertaining to the safety, indemnity of life, reputation, which is chastity, and property. However, the non-Muslims are exempted from laws their religions held to be permissible, such as drinking wine and eating pork. Okay. However, even though it affects non-Muslims, the Sharia prescribed punishments cannot be meted out. Why? Because its establishment in our current context, in our situation right now, does not fulfill the requirements. There are so many requirements before the Sharia prescribed rules can be implemented, can be meted out. But in Malaysia, these requirements are not fulfilled. So because of this, the establishment, because of the non-fulfillment of the requirements, the Sharia prescribed punishments cannot be meted out. And also we have constitutional issues and other legal impediments. So maybe Dr. Alwani, you would like to add?
Yeah, Dr. Alwani, would you like to add something?
I would like to ask Dr. Nurul, instead of answering, in which area does non-Muslims are involved if Sharia is applied?
Okay, if you open to the fiqh canons, the rubrics, It's a matter of consensus of not just the 4 schools of thought, but all the 8 schools of thought. We originally had 8 schools of thoughts, but 4 have become defunct and this does not survive. So we only left with 4. The non-Muslims are to be punished when it comes to the hudud. Okay, we will talk about the hudud law. It's not just the Muslims who are to be punished for adultery, the non-Muslims too. That means if a Muslim man committed adultery with a non-Muslim woman, both of them must be punished with the same law. We don't have a separate law for Muslim, separate law for non-Muslim as is practice here in Malaysia, because our constitution, the 9th schedule, the list 2 state list, limits the application of Islamic law to Muslims only. So, but in Islamic law, this law applies to everybody. The same for theft, the same for qazaf, the same for what else? I mentioned about reputation and chastity. That means when non-Muslim women they leave the house, they are expected to cover as well. These are mentioned in fiqh books like in the Nihaya or the Tuhfah of Ibn Hajar, and these matters are agreed upon. But because of this impediment, this cannot be possibly implemented in Malaysia, in multi-religious Malaysia. So the Sharia provides a leeway because the requirements are not fulfilled, then the prescribed rules are dropped.
Dr. Alwani, can I?
Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Alwani, can you just ask, just now he was mentioning, Dr. Nurul was mentioning a little bit about marriage. Could you just also share a little bit on marriage and family life in Islam?
Oh,
A little bit on that, maybe you could enlighten us on that, yeah.
So marriage is something recommended in Islam to those who are capable to do so financially, physically. And in one of the chapters of the Quran, chapter number 30, verse number 31, Allah said, and one of his signs is that he created for you spouses from among yourselves so that you may find comfort in them. And he has placed between you compassion and mercy. In Arabic language, it's rahmah, sakina wa rahmah. Is it compassion and mercy? Surely in this are signs for people who reflect. So based on this verse, we can understand that ideally marriage is supposed to bring comfort, tranquility to a person, serenity. But of course, there are cases that we have to reflect upon as well. Okay, the ideal, the common rule is that a spouse, a man who is good is for the good woman and vice versa. But we also have in the Quran, which mentions some different cases, some unique cases, such as the cases of the wife of Pharaoh, Asia, who had been gifted a house in paradise, but Pharaoh goes to hell. And we have the wife of Nuh, Prophet Nuh and Prophet Lut, who will end up in the with punishment, whereas their husbands are prophets. At the same time, in the Quran, although there are many tones actually about marriage life, family life, although family is considered a very fundamental unit to build oneself, there is always reminder so that the family unit act as a form of protection against the hellfire. So each and every member of the family can act as an enemy to achieve that success in the hereafter, because the enemy, in sense of we have to take care of each and every member. The man, the role of a husband in this sense is actually qawwam, which means not a leader, autocratic leader, dictator, no, but someone who is supposed to protect the wife and the whole family members, protect from the hellfire, protect by providing the necessities to the family members. So this basically it about the marriage and family life in Islam.
So, Dr. Alwani, if I may just add a little bit, or ask you just to from what you say about family life, we understand that a lot of the religions that we have, they grow out of a civilization, a certain context, and many of the religions have kind of come out, developed from a civilization that is very much patriarchal, in that sense. Like you talk about the man being, the protector of the family. But we also see that, as civilizations continue to progress and develop, the thought processes also change. Or what I'm coming to is that, in terms of the role of women, today we talk a lot about the role of women. Have you seen a change? I mean, through the civilization that today in Islam, do women have a greater role?
Actually, in Islam, the roles of men and women are similar. This is actually mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, chapter number 9, verses 77 to 78. Okay, the meaning is the believers, both men and women, are guardians of one another. They encourage good and forbid evil, establish prayer and pay alms tax, and obey Allah and His Messenger. It is they who will be shown Allah's mercy. Surely Allah is Almighty, All-Wise. Okay, so based on this, actually, we can see that both have equal roles in the community. The roles here mentioned is to do good, forbid evil. In other words, to upgrade the society. I'm not saying this because we have been civilized already, but I'm actually taking back, extracting what is already there in the Quran. If I were to support this argument based on the hadith and of the Prophet, which reports the actions of the women in the past, which means 1,400 years ago, we can see various of hadith, about 175 hadith, which describe the active participation of women in the community among the sahabiyat, the female companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they have done a lot to the community. Some of them contributed in the sense of helping the poor. Some of them work as cleaners in the mosque, for example. One of them, which is most popular, is a businesswoman, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they have been very active in the community. So with this role in mind, perhaps we could say that the distortion was in the timeline of the history, whereby this understanding has been misunderstood in a way, or misled in a way, that women participation, women's role in the community has been blocked somewhere or has been marginalized somewhere, which we see now that they are not empowered to be active in the community for some reasons. So if I were to speak about hadith which have been misunderstood as well, there are many critiques of the hadith going on. One of them is like this one, which goes, which the meaning is like generally like this: the best woman is the woman who is never seen by a man. So this is a hadith which is criticized based on the narratives of the hadith and the context which has been used. They say that the narrators involved said that this was the answer of Fatima, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad SAW, when he asked about who is the best woman. But this is ironic in itself, because people have seen Fatima, the wife of the Prophet, being out to the community to participate in doing good. So something wrong in the understanding. There's something wrong in the understanding. So that's about the role of women in Islam. If you were to ask me about the restrictions of women as compared to men, it depends on how people see these restrictions. Because, for example, when we talk about the covering or the dress code of a Muslim woman, the dress code is meant for so that they are different, so that they can be known by their identity, so that they are protected, the chastity. Okay. At the same time, there's an order for the men. Okay, in the same surah, the verse before the verse about covering of the body, the same surah also, Allah stated about the men who are supposed to lower their gaze, to look, to protect their sight from seeing things that they are not supposed to see, because of chastity as well. So, considering all that, I do not see there is much restrictions in this particular topic that we're talking about. Yeah.
I like Malaysia for its many reasons. One of the reasons is because it's very colorful. It's very colorful, multicolored. And among these multicolored things that we have is also the multi-religious and multicultural society that we are in. And Islam, being one of the forefront religions, or rather the ones with more biggest population in Malaysia, what do you say? This is either take from Dr. Nurul or Dr. Alwani about their other religions and the dialogue with other religions, interreligious dialogue, let's say. So, what are those things that we always are concerned about? Like tonight we are having this is a very beautiful platform we are having engaging ourselves in. So, from your perspective or your understanding, or what Islam say about other religions and interreligious dialogue?
Okay.
Dr. Alwani, maybe?
So, okay, all right. See, number one, when we talk about the perspective of Islam about one thing, we must consider that there are, in some cases, there's a spectrum of opinions about things, and this issue is related to the issue of religious pluralism at large, as some people may define it, but I would like to use the other term, which is called religious plurality or peaceful coexistence. So first of all, when I say it's peaceful coexistence, I would like to shed some light upon one fact. Okay, and again, this is a dispute among many scholars in Islam, within Islam. So this is my stance. I see that Islam actually holds an exclusive view on the validity of religion. And that's why there's in the Quran the verse which says, Inna dina indallahi Islam. Verily, the only religion which is accepted in the sight of Allah is Islam. Okay, so majority of the people in Malaysian context believe in this. Okay, having said that, okay, it does not mean that the rest are enemies. Okay, because we believe in the validity, exclusive validity of Islam, Muslims have the responsibility of doing something which is called da'wah, or which is similar to missionary process, calling the others to Islam, inviting the others to Islam. In the Quran itself, in chapter number 16, verse number 127, is mentioned that the process of invitation to Islam must be very wise. Udu'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah, which means invite all to the way of your Lord with wisdom. Wal mau'izatil hasana, and kind advice. And only debate with them with the best manner. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. So this verse tells something that da'wah is a process which requires wisdom, kindness, and all sorts of beauty. Okay. While doing so, there's also another verse that we have to focus. That's verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter number 5, verse number 48, which says, we have revealed you, O Prophet. Okay, that's a long one, but I would like to only read the core of the point. If Allah had willed, He would have made you one community, but His will is to test you with that He has given each of you. Which means if Allah wants, He will make everybody Muslims. But it is His decree as well to make people in various forms, various religions. Okay, because of that, we come back to the most fundamental aspect of dialogue, which is Surah Al-Hujurat, verse number 13. O humanity, indeed, we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous among you. Allah is truly all-knowing, all-aware. So for me, in order to live harmoniously with one another, is by engaging just like we do today. Congratulations for the organizer. I hope that this exercise is actually started by the Muslims, because we have to know one another, okay, and then to be engaged in more solid activities, not only of talking about religions, but also to go down to the field, down to the earth, to see and help people as our religions have encouraged us. So that's how I see it.
Dr. Nurul, I would like to, you have been on many panels, interreligious panels. We have been together in each other's company on different occasions. How do you view, as a way forward for Malaysia? Do you think, the more we engage in conversation, I'm not just talking about inter-religious. Sometimes I think it's also important intra-religious within ourselves too, to try and understand ourselves in terms of our identity in relation to another. Do you think that is something that is actively pursued in Malaysia? And if no, why do you think it's not?
Well, I would say, how shall I say it? Okay. I would say that we Malaysians, we have this fear of the unknown. Okay. Unknown about other religions, unknown about our own religion. And because of this fear of the unknown, we tend to resist that unknown thing and the person that comes with it. So it creates the barrier, and we are not able to appreciate coexistence. So what needs to be done, there must be regular exercise, not only to know about other religion or other culture. As you said about intra-religion, for example, I would have to say simple issues like dogs. Okay, when you mention dogs, I mean to the general to the layman, to the lay Muslims out there, they would say, "Oh, dog is najis." Yeah, the ritual things, put it aside, but this does not mean the ritual uncleanliness of dog. Okay, the ritual impurity of dog does not mean that we have to be inhumane, does not mean we have to abuse dogs whenever we see dogs in the street. Does not mean we have to kill them, throw stones at. This is just an example, and these mistreatments of dogs and the other one, swine. Um, it has this misconception, okay, have become so absorbed into the psyche of the people that it becomes a taboo to mention, even to mention the word dog. So this is why intra-religious dialogue is very important. We need to teach people what is the correct understanding and how to relate to not just to the other circle, but how to relate within our circle. So by doing this, we are able to, inshallah, God willing, we would be able to break the barriers to coexistence. I hope that answers your question,
Yeah.
Father Clarence. Yes.
I think, we kind of agreed in the beginning we'll talk for 1 hour, but it's so interesting that we have gone to about an hour, 15 minutes. If you don't mind, just for a few more minutes, there are some questions that our audience would like to pose to you. Perhaps we could take a couple of questions if that's all right with you. There is a question, let me see, about the Hajj. Maybe Dr. Alwani, since you mentioned it earlier, the question is, what are the requirements for one to go to Hajj?
Okay. Please add if I miss some points, yeah, Dr. Nurul. As far as I can remember, it's the physical strength and financial capability. Only two requirements. Did I miss anything?
Now, before, have you been to the Hajj? I mean, both of you?
Not yet.
Okay,
For me,
all right.
not yet. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask what was your personal experience, Dr. Nurul? Have you been?
I've been to the lesser Hajj, the Umrah. Yes.
Could you share what is your spiritual experience of doing it?
Well, the Umrah is very much the lesser form of Hajj. We don't have the gathering at, like the Hajj gathering. So my experience would be limited to the Umrah ritual. I've been there, I think about 10 times to Mecca, and it teaches me about patience, because I'm not dealing with only my fellow Malaysians, fellow Malays. I'm dealing with people from all over the world, and they are difficult. Trust me, they are difficult. Difficult to handle, difficult to be patient with in the first place. But you must. It was a great exercise for me. So I managed to control my anger, especially in the Mecca itself, not so much, but in the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, where people would flock to pay a visit to the Prophet's tomb, and they would step on your head, on your shoulder, and they don't care. So it really makes me, I wanted to, if I did not compose myself, I would have uttered so many things that I'm not supposed to say. But that experience, it taught me to maintain my composure, to control my anger, to be appreciative of everybody. And I actually make friends from a country that I never know that it existed. Liberia. I never knew that there was a country by the name Liberia, and there was also one another. I forgot. It's very small country. I forgot the name. So yeah, it made me to. I learned to be appreciative, and trust me, my patience has grown from this to this. I would say. Yeah, from this, I had little patience. I said when I was young, I would throw tantrums when I was younger. But the Umrah experience really, taught me to be a better person in terms of controlling anger, managing my patience, and I don't know. I'm not sure whether I can compare.
Apart from the spiritual connection, it helps you grow in virtues too, human virtues.
Yeah,
As you said, you come back
human
with
virtues and grace. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Father Xavier, I think we have, reached the end of our conversation this evening. I know there are many things that people want to ask. It's very hard to explain, a whole religion in just 60 minutes. It's almost impossible. But we hope that we have been able to at least touch on some key points to kind of, I would say, like an appetizer for our audience to go and read up more. Now, before we go, if there's someone who wants to read up more, get information, is there a simple book that you would recommend, that's available, that if they want to know a little bit more about the Islamic faith? Either Dr. Nurul, Dr. Alwani.
Dr. Alwani. Over to you.
I remember one book, Islam in Focus, quite thin, it's not thick at all. But I can't remember the author. Sorry about that. Islam in Focus.
Islam in Focus, yes.
Yeah, and so that's it to our listeners this evening. If you want to know a bit more about the faith, Islam in Focus is a book that you could pick up and to try and understand. I think just to kind of before I hand you over to Father Xavier, I think this is a very important aspect of living together, that we come together and we share what we believe. Not so much to debate who is right, who is wrong. I always believe at the end of the day, the eternal truth belongs to God, and only He understands everything, and if we can understand Him, then we are God. We'll never understand the fullness of His truth, and I think when we start talking like this, and understand, talking to one another and hearing one another, giving space to listen. I think sometimes, when people think of interreligious dialogue, they think, coming together and to compare, and that's far from it. We're not here to compare, but I think it's important that we listen to one another and try and understand, and at the end of it all, to be able to appreciate one another. And I think that's the best thing about the uniqueness of Malaysia, is that we are able to have everything in this small country. Brother Xavier?
Thank you, Father Clarence. Actually, you must thank, or rather congratulate all those listeners from home for following us more than an hour now. We said 1 hour, but we have gone. Those of you who have been faithfully following, we congratulate you for listening to us. And next week, we have another segment, an interesting one on Buddhism. And today, very specially, I would like to thank the AMEIA family. AMEIA family who have put in so much of effort, Charlotte and the team, and in particular, Eddie, Matthew, Anne, and Maria, who has organized, who has come up with this beautiful arrangement for this this topic on Islam. And not to forget our Mark, who has been behind the scene, who has been helping us with this podcast. And as usual, Father Clarence, the host, the moderator, who has been always doing excellent. And we would want to see him again in the coming days, coming weeks rather. And last but not least, I wish to take this occasion to thank our esteemed speakers, those who shared Dr. Nurul, Ustaz Dr. Nurul Haq and Dr. Alwani Ghazali. We are indebted to you for your presence, making yourself available with your sharings. Beautiful. I have learned quite a bit from you, from these sharings, and I think our people also definitely would have learned and gained quite a bit. And thanks to all of you. And I hand over the baton to Father Clarence to conclude.
Maybe, Zemi, you want to tell our listeners about next Tuesday? We have another one. You want to give them a preview of next Tuesday's session?
Yes, next Tuesday. Thank you, Father. Next Tuesday will be the same time on Buddhism, and we would like you to, clock in or tune in to another segment of interesting interactive sharing. As like what two esteemed speakers have said, like Father has put the first song very apt on from Saint Francis of Assisi, peace. I think at the end of the day, we are not here to say so many things, but these sharings will all converge to one thing and one thing alone, that is peace. And peace is the one thing that the world is in need, where we can enjoy that peace. And with peace, we can go beyond all borders, all boundaries, to be able to share one another with one another. So I invite you all to come. I'm sure tonight also there are people from all religions, all faiths who are watching here. So those of you who are here, we congratulate you, and please do come and join us in the coming 6 other interesting weeks. So thank you once again, and I hand over to Father Clarence. Thank you, Father, for a beautiful sharing as well.
Yeah, just to thank both our guests, Dr. Nurul, nice seeing you again, though virtually. We hope to have a coffee soon with you when we are able to, and also Dr. Alwani. Hopefully, we can actually sit around a table and have a nice conversation with coffee and tea.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Though it's 31st August, Merdeka Day, do mark down on your calendar at 8 p.m. We have a conversation with Buddhism. Till then, see you all.